2 years later, it's been, it's been 2 years since that moment. And those three enthusiastic, super excited entrepreneurs that started Warhorse have now been reduced to one. Every college that we went to, we had friends who were writing programs, who were building robots, who could do crazy things in the technical field, but then they couldn't answer the question of tell me something about yourself. When we did that, we realized, hey, this works. Because when you take a child and give him the ability to speak in 6th standard or 5th standard, the trajectory of their life dramatically changes. So you had a teacher who'd say, hey, you're dumb or you're not intelligent. And as soon as I call a kid dumb, right, because of his marks and say you're not smart, let's forget dumb, then that kid sort of tells himself or herself the story.
Today's Evam Soapbox features True Stories project, and we're focusing on stories of startups and entrepreneurs. So, featuring stories of don't startup entrepreneurs heard is today's True Story project at the Evam Soapbox.
So it was November 2016. The three founders of Warhorse, some 20-something, beard game not this strong, like hardly could grow anything, sitting in this little tiny room with one of our mentors. And this mentor was basically viciously checking the veracity of the claims that we were making as a company, that we were going to change the world. At this point of time, we were not entirely sure of what the vision of our company was going to be. And he kept asking us questions. This was a protracted discussion about 5 hours long, where at the end he asked us 2 questions that we had to answer individually. He asked us the question of A, what is the vision of your company for you? And B, what is your idea of success? Now, the three of us had been together for a year now, and we had brainstormed so many times, and we knew exactly what Warhorse was, and all three of us gave 3 very, very distinct answers that were completely different from each other. And in that moment, I realized that's when you realize that people might have the same idea, but they don't have the same dreams. They don't have the same visions. 2 years later, it's been 2 years since that moment, and those three enthusiastic, super excited entrepreneurs that started Warhorse have now been reduced to one, which is me. So essentially, when Sunil asked me to tell me a story about Warhorse, the idea was a story that you don't tell often about being an entrepreneur. My story is when I started up and then the wheels sort of rolled off, but the car continued moving. It was 2015 when the vision of Warhorse or the idea of Warhorse started. It was 6 friends who built this relationship, and as with every great relationship in Chennai, it started at Bessie B. It wasn't behind one of these dustbins with us making out. No, that's not how it started. But we were sitting in a circle where the police had to come and check, because how can 6 people sitting on a beach do anything productive? So we were discussing the idea of education, what our strengths were, what the problems were, and the one thing that we came down to was the fact that it was vital that people should be able to communicate and speak effectively. Because to every college that we went to, we had friends who were writing programs, who were building robots, who could do crazy things in the technical field, but then they couldn't answer the question of tell me something about yourself, and they wouldn't get the job. And we knew nothing, but we were sailing through life because of the fact that we could just speak. So at the core of it, when Warhorse started, it was a company that wanted everybody to speak better, just communicate more effectively. So we went to the grassroots, not grassroots as in per se schools, and we started doing public speaking and communication workshops. And when we did that, we realized, hey, this works. Because when you take a child and give him the ability to speak in 6th standard or 5th standard, the trajectory of their life dramatically changes. Because now they feel more confident, and because they may feel more confident, they start doing more things, and that completely changes the individual that they are or they're meant to be. So it was working. It was being bought by people, and so there was product market fit. These are terms we did not understand back then, but it seemed like it was working, and so we continued on this journey and we started building more curriculum. And as we delved deeper and deeper and we looked at the problems that existed in education, it wasn't just the fact that people weren't getting the skills that were required to live in the real world. It was just fundamentally flawed. How so? You had a teacher who'd say, hey, you're dumb or you're not intelligent. And as soon as I call a kid dumb, right, because of his marks, and say you're not smart, let's forget dumb, then that kid sort of tells himself or herself the story. that, yeah, I'm not smart. And so when they go to an exam, they're not even thinking about the exam. They're just thinking about the fact that I'm not smart. And because I'm not smart, I won't be able to do this. And so you're just crippling a young mind at that age who has the same potential as you and I. And that was a problem to us. So that's when we started building curriculum, and we started building like methodologies or like classes which were gamified. And we met our mentor who was directing our thought process. And he basically told us that think about building for the future. Because right now, every other educational enterprise in the country is building for now. You're solving the now problem, which is getting those marks that you require in your 12th standard or getting into that college that is required, so writing that exam. But what we want to do is build for the future, where you are building for the future where automation has come in, where the situation has changed so much, where the skills that you're using are so dramatically different. At this point of time, things were going great because, it was an entrepreneur. We were going around introducing ourselves as a founder. Like, we were getting a great kick out of it. We were like, oh, we can do all sorts of things with our culture. We have movie nights and we have game nights. And these are all fantastic things that we were doing with our company. But again, a year rolls by. And then, as kids, when floods and storms hit, you're like super excited because school's closed and it's fantastic. You get so many holidays. Then when your business is entirely built on school kids turning up, it's a disaster. Because that November, things just crashed because people weren't just turning up to our classes. And next thing you know, we were like financially struggling, and suddenly reality started hitting. This wasn't like a little bubble anymore. And what caused this cascade was this one really close friend of mine who was part of Warhorse left. Now, the reason he left, now you don't understand, all these relationships when you have with your founders and your starting member is like a relationship with a girlfriend. There's absolutely no difference. And so that breakup was him telling me, it's not you, it's me. He's like, I have other things to do, different plans. I love you. I believe in this vision, but I have other things to do. And it really hit me personally because I felt like I was being abandoned. And honestly, our friendship suffered for a while after that till we sat down and said, oh my God, we need to deal with this unresolved issue of our breakup, right? But that sort of opened this floodgate where people now were questioning whether this was possible. Like, as 22-year-olds, we were like, yeah, we're going to change the world. But suddenly, like, realities start hitting in. You start seeing your friends. You can't go to Bangalore, but your friends are flying to Bali, right? You can't even, you're thinking about how are you going to pay your bills while people are making six-figure salaries or like getting lakhs in their bank accounts, and you can't go to the same places that they're visiting because you can't really afford it. And that really starts seeping in. And in that moment, I had one of my founders who, again, our breakup was a very different kind of breakup again. It was the kind of breakup where he basically was asking for permission for him to dump me, right? You know how that works, where, we're holding each other back, right? We want to do different things. My life trajectory is different. And I got it, honestly. Because when I sat down, and this is one of my closest friends, and we're sitting down and we've gone through a lot, and he's telling me, this is not what I want to do. And it's really hard for him to say that. To me, especially, right? Because we've built a bond. We've trusted each other. We've said that we're going to go through this marathon. And so that happened. And that was all right. I was still dealing with that fine when the sucker punch hit, which was my second founder telling me, and that hurt because this was the person I started the dream with. That was the first conversation where we were going to say, this is what we're going to build. And it progressively and organically grew. And he told me he has to leave because, again, his dreams were different from what ours were. He still believes in the vision of Warhorse. But what his life is not what is fitting into the perspective of Warhorse. And that's the lesson I have learned. And this is a lesson for life, I guess, at 23. But people leave, right? And people leave for so many different reasons. And you can't really hold them to that because they are on their own journey. And they need to do their own things, and you can't really hold on to them and say, don't leave, because that will make the relationship even worse. What you need to do is try to understand the two perspectives. And at no point in time was it like a really messy breakup where we're flinging things at each other and saying, how could you leave me? It's more like, okay, how do we go forward from here? Because we both still love each other on some level, right? So at the end of the day, it comes down to that meeting again with Swami, where he was essentially telling us about how this is a marathon, what we wanted to do, to build an education ecosystem which makes you a better version of yourself by helping you do those little steps and creating the mindset for you to be better. And that is a journey, and it's a marathon, and running a marathon is not easy, and people leave. The story he told us was about the fact that in the South African cricket team, when it was in shambles, it was absolutely disastrous. Hansi Cronje had just died, and at this point of time, they were recruiting or, trying to hire or get a new captain for the team. And there were multiple people. Sean Pollock was one of them. There were experienced people. And then walks in this young 20-year-old Graham Smith. And at the end of this discussion, they ask him, hey, Graham, so at the end of the day, what are you willing to put on the table to get this? And he's like, what are you willing to leave at the table, per se? And he's like, my youth. And that hit me that day. But over the next 2 years, it's hit me more and more. Because if you really want to make something happen over a period of time, it doesn't take 2 years. Entrepreneurship is not an financial planning where, you get funded, you take some of that money and then you run away with it and have a great time. If you really want to solve a problem, it takes time. Google did not become Google in like 2 years. It took 10. And what they were is a search engine optimization, right? So the idea was, this is where I am. I have my youth. I'm young. I'm dumb. I'm broke. And because of that, I am hungry and I am foolish. And by virtue of that, I am willing to do what it takes to change the way people live and learn. Because when you change the way people live and learn, you can change the world. Thank you so much.
Money is seldom the reason why people don't start businesses. Fear of money is. Failures will far outnumber successes. Make failure a friend. Become familiar with it, know how to look it in the eye and find out more about it. People do business with people they like and are familiar with. To most people, you are the business. What makes an entrepreneur special is the bridge of intelligence between the left and the right brain, the bridge between business and art. Don't start up what no one tells you about starting your business. If you know somebody in your life who you believe should start up their own venture or has started up their own venture, if you are that person yourself who's waiting with trepidation saying, I don't know if I should start up on my entrepreneurial journey, this book is for you, because this has been written with every single thought that I wish I had known 15 years back before I started up on my entrepreneurial journey. An EQ manual, so to speak, on helping you through your startup journey. Don't start up. Available on Amazon and all the book sites and available at a bookstore near you.